Morning information now, and coming up here in just a bit, we'll check some more news. But as part of our local news segment, it's time to talk food with our favorite grocery gal, Amy Goldsmith. Amy's helped to launch and grow some of the most well-known brands that many of us eat or at least see on the grocery shelves. She's a food industry insider and lives her life as a food finder, looking for the best new products and trends. You can follow Amy and direct message her any questions through Facebook and also on Instagram at The Grocery Gal. Well, Amy, first of all, welcome back to the show and good morning.
Good morning, Ben.
All right. We always like our listener questions. We appreciate that. And I've got one that was just sprung on me here moments ago. And I don't even know the answer to this one. So I have to defer to the expert. And I guess that would be you. But our listener wants to know if you're a California native.
I am a California native. I'm a second-generation Angelina. My mom was also born and raised in Los Angeles. My dad is from New York City. So I'm actually a true Valley girl. Grew up in the San Fernando Valley, and I've spent a lot of summers in New York City.
Okay, interesting there. Well, there you go. I thought maybe you were from California, that you were born here. So that now we know officially.
Official Californian here.
All right. So anyway, we're going to go through some listener questions. So Thanksgiving is just around the corner. You told us to buy our small turkeys early, but overall there will be no shortage. So we're good there. But let's talk about desserts. So our listener wants to know, what are the top pies for Thanksgiving? I got to know this. I'm in charge of the pie this year. So.
Okay. Well, this is a great question. And the numbers actually are a little tricky and maybe a bit controversial because many people make their own pies, or they buy them from a restaurant or specialty food store, and those numbers of purchases aren't really tallied in the information that I receive. So these numbers that I'm going to give you are based on grocery store purchases and general surveys that I researched. But overall, in America, we are apple pie eaters. This is the number one pie in general and for Thanksgiving. However, if we slice into the numbers, total pun intended, by the way, we can break it down by region. Would you like me to do that for you?
Absolutely. Break it down, Amy. Break it down.
Okay, here we go. So the East, South, Central states like Alabama, Kentucky, Mississippi, and Tennessee, they have split decisions, but neither choice was pumpkin. They were split between apple and pecan pie. Finally, the West, South, Central states like Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Texas, it was pecan pie. That's their pie for Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, also pecan pie. And Hawaii and Wyoming were really the only two states that chose pumpkin. I was actually really surprised. New England, Mid-Atlantic, California, and basically every other state that I didn't mention, including the Sun Belt and Pacific Northwest, it's all about apple pie. And I'm quite honestly shocked. I would have assumed pumpkin had it in the bag, but I think pumpkin's a bit overrated. Do you have a favorite?
I love pumpkin pie. I love apple pie. I love pecan pie. I think I just like pie is what it comes down to. So, but if I had a favorite, I think for Thanksgiving it'd probably be pumpkin. I tend to grab or maybe levitate towards pumpkin. For Christmas though, that might be apple pie. A little different.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So now, what about you?
Honestly, I truthfully don't care. I really just like the crust. So it can be anything in there.
All right.
I'm that person.
Yeah. Well, that's easy. All right. So now we had another caller ask about organic foods and what products should we buy organic?
This is a really important question, and I'm so glad that someone asked this. Because organic food costs so much more, and it's a really easy way to drive up your grocery bill. And sometimes there's only so much you can afford. So Trader Joe's has a lot of reasonably priced organic foods, and even Costco too. And remember, natural is not organic. So in terms of purchasing organic foods, my easy to follow rule of thumb, if you can, is shop organic on the perimeter of the store. So fruits, vegetables, eggs, milk, dairy in general, chicken and beef. But remember, with fruit, if it has skin on it for the most part, like a banana or avocado, there's no need for organic. Melons, if you rip really well before cutting, conventional should be okay.
So, Amy, you always remind us about shopping the perimeter anyway. It's healthier. So now what about the other aisles?
Look, if you have all the money in the world, sure, buy everything organic, great, go for it. But most of us, we can't afford it. So you're eating in those middle aisles what I call sometimes food or a treat. And that's processed food. So does it really matter if it's organic? I mean, you shouldn't be eating it anyway. So if you need to watch your dollars, those potato chips, those cookies, those chocolate bars, those are processed, and it just is. So for me personally, I just don't care if it's organic. I would say you want natural in the center aisle, so make sure it says all natural, or organic on the perimeter. There's a list called the Dirty Dozen, and it's the most important fruit and vegetables to eat organically, and it's analyzed data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which regularly tests fruits and vegetables for pesticide residue. And out of the 47 most popular vegetables and fruits that were included in the analysis, the Dirty Dozen list represents the foods that were contaminated with the most pesticides. And they do this every year. And these on the Dirty Dozen are strawberries, and strawberries always seem to be number one, by the way. So strawberries, spinach, kale, apples, grapes, nectarines, peaches, cherries, pears, celery, potatoes, and peppers. And that's the Dirty Dozen that you should buy organic. I would also encourage dairy products such as milk and yogurt in there as well.
All right. Well, some good information there. We have grocery gal Amy Goldsmith at the time 7:39 here on KUHL. So we had another question from a listener, and this one I'm very interested in as well. So what's the difference between Japanese and Chinese food? I know they're both yummy, but there's got to be a difference in there.
There is a big difference, and mostly Japanese. We'll just start off with the basic. Japanese food is healthier. Chinese food, that wok is really a fryer. So Chinese food is really fried, and Japanese food isn't. So most Japanese food involves the use of fresh ingredients and doesn't really have heavy seasoning. Chinese foods are oilier, and because of the frying methods used. Japanese, they like grilling or even serving their food when it's in a natural state. The most notable similarity between the two cuisine cultures is the use of overall fresh vegetables. And when we think of fresh seafood or fresh vegetables, the dishes must always require fresh meats and produce. And so you can see those similar traits in both of the foods. But, for example, and both cultures are also huge consumers of soy sauce and tofu and rice and noodles. But Japanese food overall just showcases more subtle flavors than Chinese cuisine. And like I said, Japanese cuisine is much healthier, and it's light on the stomach. And that's the reason why Japanese food is considered to be healthier when compared to Chinese food. Chinese recipes need a lot of grease during the food prep, and the grease and the oil obviously increases the calories in every meal. And the typical Chinese stir fry is really high in calories and in sodium. It's not the ingredients that are unhealthy, but how it's prepared with the oil and the grease.
Yeah, very, very true. So is there one that you prefer, Chinese or Japanese?
I personally love Japanese food. I always think my desert island food. If you were stuck on a desert island and you can only have one cuisine, what would it be?
Yeah.
It would be Japanese food for me. I never feel sick or heavy or stuffed after eating it. By the way, another difference is presentation. I mean, the Japanese plate their food so lovely and precisely. It's thoughtful and it's beautiful. And if you look at packaging of food, that you might find in a grocery store that's Japanese, you'll notice the graphics and the photos are all very, very pretty. They take a lot of pride in their design. On a side note, though, if you are ordering from a Chinese restaurant, you can ask them for low oil and low salt. So when you're ordering and you're ordering your kung pao and your chicken chow mein and whatever it is, you can say, by the way, low oil, low salt. And they will cook it or walk it that way for you. So you can cut some of the calories and sodium down.
All right. And for me, I think I probably prefer Chinese food. I love Chinese food. Japanese food I like, but I probably would prefer Chinese. But I love something called tempura. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Of course. And it's fried. Ben,
Yes.
I knew you were going to say that.
Okay. But
Ben, that's terrible.
all right. I got to work on that. But I love them both. But I always thought Japanese food, they used more seafood than they do Chinese food.
Well, you're thinking probably of sushi.
Okay.
But there's, the hibachi chicken. I mean, if you think of, let's do like a benihana.
Okay.
That's Japanese.
Okay.
That's Japanese. So that's a lot of grilling. But Japanese for the most part is much healthier.
All right. There you go.
And they do have And the beef, the Wagyu beef, that's Japanese.
Oh, that sounds good, too.
Great Japanese.
All right. The only unfortunate thing talking with you, it makes me hungry in the morning. So. All right. By the way, you can follow Amy and direct message her any questions through Facebook and also on Instagram at The Grocery Gal. And again, thanks to our listeners for those fabulous questions. And I'm sure we'll get into it again coming up here next week. We're hoping so anyway.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Amy.
You.
Okay. 743. Don't forget birthdays and anniversary wishes. 928-1440 is my number.
Local Copies, etc. is your one-stop shop for everything from the smallest business card to labels, giant posters, banners, and displays.